Good evening, my beautiful family. So now we go into the process of cooking our supper tonight, and hubby is so waiting for this. I'm going to show you a picture of this beautiful brisket that he did for us in the smoker this evening, which brought about what we're having for supper and what I'm going to show you to go along with this. We're actually going to use some low carb buns and have barbecued brisket with coleslaw and onion rings. And I'm going to do these onion rings and coleslaw in a very unique way for you. So I'm going to show you this brisket, and then we're going to go into making the coleslaw. I believe he done an amazing job, and the flavor to this is awesome. He's got a beautiful bark on this, beautiful ring. I cannot wait to start digging into this. So with that, I am going to show you how to make a coleslaw that I have yet to find anywheres online. It might be found, you might have found it, but I haven't. So I'm going to show you a coleslaw that most of you probably didn't know you can make. Okay, so I don't know many of you, but I know most people, especially my husband. James absolutely loves KFC coleslaw. Only we know that in the ingredients in the KFC coleslaw, he cannot have whatsoever. It will spike his sugar to the max. Now, I have researched and tried to find the alternatives, and I couldn't. So I sat down one night. Now, mind you, I did not do the macros to this, but I do know how I am preparing this, have cut the carbs and the sugar immensely. This does not spike his sugar, and he can eat a good amount of it. So I'm going to share that recipe with you. I'm going to be giving you the basic recipe, and I'm going to turn around and make it cut down in half, made the diabetic way. So I'm going to be giving you both at the same time. And I'm going to show you, before we start the recipe, how to go ahead and do the cabbage part of this. Now, you could do this one or two ways. Slice it thinly and then dice it. I used to do that, but I did find a way that I can do it through my food processor. You just want to pulse it. You don't want to pulverize it. You don't want to puree it. Just pulse it to nice bits. And I'm going to show you what these look like. So just like KFC, you just want these nice little bit chunks, and that's it. So I just pulsed mine till I can get those bits, and I still got a good chunk for a coleslaw mix. Now I'm going to go ahead and start this recipe with you. Okay, in the original recipe, and that's the full recipe, it calls for 8 cups of diced, or like I showed you, the bits coleslaw. We are doing half. There is no way my husband and I, for the two of us, are going to eat 8 cups worth of coleslaw. That's for a big family. This is the reason why I'm doing both versions. So, original recipe, 8 cups of diced cabbage, half cup would be, or half portion, we're doing 4 cups of the diced cabbage. The next ingredient in the recipe is 1 carrot that you can use shredded or in the food processor. Now for us, for diabetics, a carrot can be a high sugar count. So what I did, I'm using it strictly for coloring only, and I did 1 tablespoon of finely shredded carrot. That's just enough to add it to this dish to give it the color that you need to it. The next ingredient is 2 tablespoons of grated onions. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a really hard time grating onions that don't turn to mush. So with the original recipe at 2 tablespoons, we're doing half of this. So I'm using 1 tablespoon of very minced onions. The next ingredient calls for 1/3 cup of sugar. Now, when I thought of the sugar, I thought there is no way we are using table sugar in this. And when I found out actually that's in the recipe, it kind of freaked me out. I mean, we love this. So I came up with an alternative. Now at this point, this is going to be based by your preference and your taste. With half of this recipe, 1/3 cup of sugar would be 5.5 tablespoons of sugar. I am using monk fruit, the Langto monk fruit, and I'm only using 2.5 tablespoons of this sugar. Now I will be putting the diabetic version in the description below for you so that you will have this recipe. The next ingredient is a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to go 1/4 teaspoon of salt. The next ingredient is 1/8 teaspoon of white pepper. I don't have white pepper, so I'm just going to sprinkle some cracked pepper in here. Then the next ingredient for the original is 1/4 cup whole milk. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to half this and make it more low carb. I will be right back. Okay, so when we go to the recipe being 1/4 cup of whole milk, for us in half, that would be 1/8 of a cup of milk. However, how I'm going to do this is take half of this 1/8 cup, fill it with heavy whipping cream. The rest of the half, I'm just going to add water. So I'm going to add my water and I'll be right back. And now I have a safer milk version, low carb and easier on a diabetic's blood sugar. So we're just going to go ahead and add our 1/8 cup of milk. Then it calls for 1/4 cup of buttermilk. We're going to use 1/8 of a cup of buttermilk. And I'll be right back for that one. Okay, so now we're going to add 1/8 of a cup of buttermilk. The next ingredient is 1/2 cup mayonnaise. We're going to do 1/4 cup mayonnaise. And again, you can adjust this any way that you like. Hubby likes it a little bit more creamier, so I'm just going to add just a tad bit more to this. And the next ingredient calls for, in the original recipe, 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. I am using 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Next is 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. I'm using, for the half version, 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice. And I add an extra ingredient to this. James actually likes celery seed in ours, so I sprinkle some celery seed in this as well. Now all you're going to do is just mix this up really well. And y'all, this comes so close to the original KFC diabetic way. I was amazed, and I did some test after test with hubby until I got this recipe just right. And once I did that, I copied this down, and we now have KFC coleslaw that he actually loves. He doesn't have to miss it, and I revamped the recipe. So I will show you what this looks like in just a minute. And there we have it, y'all. Our diabetic version of KFC coleslaw. This stuff is amazing, and it is so close to the original. You couldn't really taste it if you thought you couldn't tell if this was for a diabetic or not. It is so close to the original recipe. So I will again put the description in the description box, the recipe for this coleslaw for diabetics. Next, I'm going to do a low carb version of onion rings to go with our supper. Okay, for this next recipe, this is going to be a breading mix that is low carb that we can use for onion rings. And I had already prepared our onion rings already, so I'm getting ready to coat them. Now, in the recipe, it calls for a half a cup of all-purpose flour and a tablespoon of baking powder. I am actually going to be using 52 grams of Victoria's Keto Kitchen all-purpose flour. Now, if you used her perfected flour, you're going to have to add the tablespoon of baking powder. But if you're using her already passed all-purpose flour with the baking soda or baking powder in it, just use 52 grams of this flour. And you may end up having to add more. So at this point, all I'm going to do is coat these first. I'm going to coat these onion rings in this flour mix. And then set them aside. I'm hoping you can see this. But I'm just coating up these things here. And they're dry. Yes, it's just getting a light coating on them. So, but we're going to be taking this mix and using it here to make a dip. The reason that we're coating these is so that the dip part or the batter will stick to these onions. So I'm going to go ahead and finish coating these off, and then I will show you how to do, or let you know how to do the batter next. Okay, so now that all of the onion rings are coated, in the separate bowl, we're going to add 1 egg. And I knew I forgot something. I shall be right back. I am being privileged that one of my girls, or two of my girls, are starting to lay eggs again. So I am getting privileged to have a farm fresh egg. So I am going to use that for my 1 egg. Three-quarters of a cup of heavy whipping cream. However, I'm going to do 2/4 of a cup right now until I see how much of this flour mix will hold the liquid. I've never done this before, so I'm actually going to work on this and see how well it does. So I'm going to use 2/4. And what I'm doing, there are no recipes out here for what I'm doing. I'm just testing out recipes with Victoria's flour base. So we'll see how this goes. If it's too thick, then I'll add some more cream to it. If it's too thin, I'll have to add some more of her flour. So now I'm going to mix these two together really well. In the meantime, I have olive oil preheating in the cast iron skillet. Now to this flour mix, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika. One teaspoon of salt. I'm using Himalayan pink sea salt. And a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now I'm going to mix this all together really well, and we're going to add this to our egg and milk mix and mix it up into a batter. I kind of had an idea the last time I did this, and I started seeing a result that I liked, so I thought I'd try it this way. Now I am not going to use a breadcrumb base. You can, however, after it gets dipped in the batter, you can dip it in crushed pork rinds if you want to. I'm choosing not to do any breadcrumb base. I'm just going to keep this flour base. So now we're just going to add this to the liquid and mix it all up until it forms a nice batter for our onion rings. And actually, I may go ahead and dip them again in this bowl here as a coating after this batter mix for a dry coating in some more of her flour. And this worked out perfectly. 2/4 of a cup was just enough to make a really nice batter for her flour. So that was a good call on my part. I try to go less first and then add more if I need to. So this turned out absolutely perfect. It's a nice batter for onion rings. So I'm going to take some of her flour and add it in here as another coating, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now that we've got this, take your onion rings that have been coated, put it in your mix. Now this one kind of broke on me. Make sure they're coated pretty good. And you can do this either way. You can leave them just like they are and fry them up, or you can put them in this coating or in your ground pork rinds if you wanted like more of a crispy crunch to it. Some of the pork rinds out there are really hard, so I'm kind of doing this with just the flour base. And that's all we do, is just make sure these are coated well in this batter. You want to take the excess off of it. Take them to your flour mix and coat them. Just lightly dust them. Shake off the excess and then fry them up. I'm going to add the rest of these. This was actually 1 onion for us, so we're going to be splitting this. This recipe actually will make more than 1 onion, I will tell you. Get them golden brown on both sides, and then line them on a paper towel. And I will be back to show you the end product. Okay, y'all, so these have cooled down, and I'm going to be doing a test run on how these taste. I have done the test run on this, and these are both amazing. Either way, I have one in the second dipped floured mix and one with just the batter alone. And very honestly with you, I am going to continue to do the rest of my onion rings in this batter one. This is kind of like a tempura mix. If anybody's familiar with that, it's just a smooth batter. I actually really like that. This isn't bad, but you can tell it's got the almond flour kind of grit, floury taste to it. Although the flavor is not bad at all. So, in my opinion, I'm just going to go ahead and finish this. And hubby's getting hungry, so I am going to finish off the rest of our supper. I will put the recipe in the description box below for you on both the lower carb, lower sugared KFC that's easier on a diabetic's blood sugar, and how I did this. I come up with things and ideas. I use other sources that I received, like this flour, and I told you, when I test something, I'm going to test it to my max. So this was one of my tests, and I'm not dissatisfied with it. So the choice is up to you which one you prefer. So until then, I'm going to finish supper. We're going to have a beautiful brisket with the coleslaw and onion rings. And I'm looking forward to this not spiking hubby's sugar. So much love to you. Until next time, from Parton's Heritage Homestead.